الكساء أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء. اللهم صل على محمد. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه. فقلت عليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال لي يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء فقال السلام عليك يا جدا، السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء. اللهم صل على. فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت عليك السلام يا أبو الحسن يا أمير المؤمنين. فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله، وأتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له عليك السلام يا أخي ويا وسي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء. اللهم صل على محمد. ثم أتيته نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتا يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ أبي رسول الله بطرفه الكساء وأومى بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يعلمني ما يعلمهم ويحضنني ما يحضنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن أعداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني وأنا منهم. فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، أذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد. فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان السماوات، إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدهية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحر يجري ولا فلك يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذي هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا ربي ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. فقال جبرائيل يا ربي أتأذن لي أن أحبت إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك. فحبت أمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يخرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماعا مبنية ولا أرضا مدهية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحر يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم. قد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله. فإنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. وقال لأبي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على. فقال علي لأبيه يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واستفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيها جميع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فضنا فعذوا وشيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واستفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيها جميع من شيعتنا ومحبينا وفيهم محموم إلا وفرج الله حمه ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فضنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فعظوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة. اللهم صل على.
मर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलावत। बारे दीगर सलावत। मेरा वादा हुआ पूरा नाना मेरा वादा हुआ पूरा मैनों के सिना पर हूँ मेरा वादा हुआ पूरा नाना मेरा वादा हुआ पूरा नाना देखो नवासा कहाँ गया मैंने करबो बला को मुअल्ला किया खून मेरा आज खाके शिफा बन गया मैंने बचपन का वादा वफा कर दिया मेरा वादा हुआ पूरा मैनों के सिना पर हूँ मेरा वादा हुआ पूरा नाना मेरा वादा ہوا پورا. میرا گھر، میرے بچے، میری زندگی آپ کے دی پہ سب میں نے قربان کی. میرے ماتھے پہ بوسا دو اب آخری، برسر نو کے نیزہ سواری چلی. میرا وعدہ ہوا پورا. میں نو کے سنا پر ہوں، میرا وعدہ ہوا پورا. دین و قرآن بچے، تیرا کعبہ بچا، تا قیامت رہے گی اذان کی صدا. مدرسہ بن گئی آج سے کربلا، ہائے نانا مگر میرا گھر نہ رہا. میرا وعدہ ہوا پورا. میں نو کے سنا پر ہوں، میرا وعدہ ہوا پورا. چکیاں پیسنے والی ماں کی قسم، میری آغوش میں توڑا اکبر نے دم. کیسے لاشے جوان لایا سوئے حرم، اپنے وعدے پہ سہتا رہا غم پہ غم. میرا وعدہ ہوا پورا. میں نو کے سنا پر ہوں، میرا وعدہ ہوا پورا. کتنے لاشیں اٹھائے ہیں ایک روز میں، کتنے آنسو بہائے ہیں ایک روز میں. سینکڑوں تیر کھائے ہیں ایک روز میں، سارے وعدے نبھائے ہیں ایک روز میں. میرا وعدہ ہوا پورا. میں نو کے سنا پر ہوں، میرا وعدہ ہوا پورا. بھائی 32 برسوں سے جو ساتھ تھا، میں نے وعدہ نبھانے میں وہ کھو دیا. کھا گئی اس کے شانوں کو یہ القمہ، وہ گیا اور درد کمر دے گیا. میرا وعدہ ہوا پورا. میں نو کے سنا پر ہوں، میرا وعدہ ہوا پورا. میرے نانا یہ دولہا یہ کم سن جواں، ایسے روندھا گیا دشت میں العما. میں اپنے بیٹے کو پہچان پائی نہ ماں، اس کی دلہن نے خود توڑ دی چوڑیاں. میرا وعدہ ہوا پورا. میں نو کے سنا پر ہوں، میرا وعدہ ہوا پورا. میرے نانا سکینہ کا غم دیکھیے، عمر اتنی سی اتنے ستم دیکھیے. جلتی ریتی پہ اس کے قدم دیکھیے، کتنے مجبور ہیں آج ہم دیکھیے. میرا وعدہ ہوا پورا. میں نو کے سنا پر ہوں، میرا وعدہ ہوا پورا. ہاں وہ اصغر جو صغرا کی تھی زندگی، جس کی خاطر وہ بیمار بچی میری، چھوٹے چھوٹے سے کرتے جو سیتی رہی، اس کا خون اپنے چہرے پہ مل کے ابھی. میرا وعدہ ہوا پورا. میں نو کے سنا پر ہوں، اور محمد و آل محمد صلوات. بارے دیگر صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
چار مصرع آپ کی خدمت میں. ایک بار درود پڑھ دیجیے محمد ان کی آل پر. اشک نکلے جو غم شاہ میں پانی کی طرح اشک نکلے جو غم شاہ میں پانی کی طرح فکر بہنے لگی دریا کی روانی کی طرح فرش شبیر سے کردار بنا کر اٹھو فرش شبیر سے کردار بنا کر اٹھو ذکر شبیر نام دہراؤ کہانی کی طرح اشک نکلے جو. سورہ فاتحہ. چار بند مٹ سکے. پڑا ہے غش میں حسین غریب کا جانی پڑا ہے غش میں حسین غریب کا جانی منا رہے ہیں خوشی ظلم و جور کے بانی دم نماز جو چونکا یہ ہے در ثانی وضو کے واسطے اٹھ کر طلب کیا پانی وضو کے واسطے اٹھ کر طلب کیا پانی جو پانی آیا تو منہ آنسوؤں سے دھونے لگے پھر نگاہوں میں بابا کی پیاس رونے لگے پھر نگاہوں میں بابا کی پیاس رونے لگے تڑپ کے دل نے کہا ہائے سید خوش خو یہی تو ہے نا ملا 3 دن جو بیر وضو اسی کی چاہ میں کوثر کو چل بسے میرو اسی کے واسطے امو کے کٹ گئے بازو اسی کے واسطے امو کے کٹ گئے بازو یہی تو وہ ہے جو بے شیر نے نہ پایا تھا اسی کو مانگ کے گردن پہ تیر کھایا تھا اسی کو مانگ کے گردن پہ تیر کھایا تھا غرض کے آئے مصلی پہ اور پڑھی وہ نماز کہ جس کے بعد تھی حد وصال ناز و نیا ہر ایک ذکر طویل اور ہر ایک سجدہ دارا پکارتی تھی یہ روح حسین سجدہ نوا پکارتی تھی یہ روح حسین سجدہ نوا مجھے بھی ناز ہے جس پر یہی وہ طاعت ہے یہ آخری میرے سجاد کی عبادت ہے یہ آخری میرے سجاد کی آخری بندت ہے ہوئی تمام جو آخر نماز جان رسول دعا حمد کے رب چومتا تھا حسن قبول دیا جو شکر کا سجدے کو حق کی یاد میں تو ایک عصر کا یاد آیا سجدہ مقبول تو ایک عصر کا یاد آیا سجدہ مقبول اٹھے جو روتے ہوئے کوچے کر گئے سجدہ کہا حسین حسین اور مر گئے سجدہ کہا حسین حسین اور مر گئے سجدہ پڑا ہے غش میں
اور محمد و آل محمد صلی اللہ علیہ
Bar Mohammad wale Muhammad salawat. Now may I request Sheikh Abbas Panju from Najaf to please come to the member and address the Mu'mineen Mu'minat. May we request all the Mu'mineen to please come forward with a loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. Nare takbir, नारे रिसालत, नारे हैदरी।
رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء، حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، لا سيما ولي الله الحجة ابن الحسن صاحب الأمر والزمان. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم وعلى غاصبي حقوقهم وعلى منكري فضائلهم من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. آمين رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة، يا غريب الغرباء، يا مظلوم كربلاء. السلام على من جعل الله الشفاء في تربته. السلام على من الإجابة تحت قبته. السلام على ساكن كربلاء. فيا ليتنا ثم يا ليتنا وكنا معكم سادتي يا سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الحكيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: وجعلنا منهم أئمة يهدون بأمرنا لما صبروا وكانوا بآياتنا يوقنون. صدق الله العلي العظيم وآمنا به. زينوا مجالسكم بذكر محمد وآل محمد. أحبائي, you find that within the institution of Deen and Islam, the structure of the Deen is built upon the usul: Tawheed, Nabuwah, Imamah, Ma'ad. Tawheed, Adalat, Nabuwat, Imamat, and Ma'ad. And notice how for the fifth one I say Ma'ad as opposed to Yawmul Qiyamah, because Ma'ad is a far general term that includes the afterlife, whereas Yawmul Qiyamah is a very particular part of the afterlife. A belief of the afterlife, when we say Ma'ad, it includes Alam al-Barzakh, it includes Alam al-Raj'ah, and it includes Yawmul Qiyamah, and it includes Jannah and Jahannam, which are spheres of existence in its own respect. For Islam is built in regards to Usuluddin, these five concepts. And from these five concepts, you will find that Imamat is perhaps one of the most critical aspects of Usuluddin upon which this religion is built, for a number of reasons. You will find that your understanding of the Day of Judgment, Ma'ad, or the afterlife, is dependent on Imamat. There are many sects within the Islamic school that don't even acknowledge a realm of existence called Raj'ah. This is one. So your understanding of the afterlife, your understanding Yawmul Qiyamah. We have a number of philosophers, Muslim so-called philosophers, who come forward and say Yawmul Qiyamah, actually the Hashar and the Nashar is not the Hashar and Nashar of the body. It's the Nashar, or the resurrection of the soul. Whereas if you come back to the school of Ahlul Bayt and the interpretation of the Quran through Ahlul Bayt, you find law, we're going to be raised from the graves in flesh and blood and in the bodies that we owned in this dunya. Similarly, when it comes to the issue of adalat, your understanding of the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is contingent upon which imam you follow. Because we have schools of thought from the Amma, Aslan, they don't believe in the adala of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they use the Quran to justify this. Yahdi man yasha wa yudhillu man yasha, for example. They use verses like this to negate the adala of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the justice of Allah in its entirety. So depending on which imam you subscribe to, your understanding of adala is going to be influenced. Similarly, when it comes to nabuwah, depending on which imam you take the seerah of Rasulullah from, that image of that prophet changes. You go to the likes of Bukhari, for example, and Muslim, and you look at the descriptions that they have of Rasulullah, wal-ayadhu billah, the most violent pictures of a prophet are depicted within Bukhari. Some of the most don't know how to say this in the most polite way, احتراما for the member. Moral behaviors that you and I would not accept for ourselves are attributed to Rasulullah in Bukhari, in the way that he supposedly acted and behaved with his wives and so on and so forth. The use of violence when it comes to establish an Islamic government, depending on which imam you abide by, your understanding will be in accordance to that. So you begin to understand that the imamat is central. And similarly, when it comes to Tawheed, our understanding of Tawheed is contingent upon which imam you believe in. Because there are sects of Muslims who are under the opinion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a body. You cannot see the body with the naked eye, but He has a body. You find that there are schools of thought that say on the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put His leg in Nar Jahannam and will ask the fire, is this enough or should I add more? Depending on which imam you subscribe to, your understanding of the deen will change. Your understanding of usuluddin will change. This is not even going into furuuddin, because when you enter into furuuddin, the manner in which you perform wudu depends on which imam you follow. How you stand in your salat depends which imam you follow. How you perform hajj depends which imam you follow. Within, if you are from the followers of Ahlul Bayt, Tawafun Nisa is compulsory. And according to our hadith, a person's relationship with his or her spouse is not legitimate if they willfully, purposely neglect and abandon the Hajj, the Tawafun Nisa. Whereas if you go to the other schools of thought, Aslan, the concept of Tawafun Nisa is missing. And therefore the doors you can see are numerous. And this allows us to understand that the imamat is a central aspect of our deen. And from the usuluddin, everything revolves around this institution of imamat. If we understand this, it becomes important. Shias of Ali Muhammad, Shias of Amir al-Mu'mineen, lovers of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Shias and lovers of Imam al-Hussein, that we use these days of Azad to strengthen our usuluddin and particularly strengthen our belief in the institution of imamat. Keep in mind, throughout history and from the companions of Imam al-Hussein, the companions that gave their lives for Sayyid al-Shuhada on the day of Ashura, 72 of them, men who are at the highest level of Iman, Ilm, and loyalty when it came to the concept of Imamat. This entire concept of loyalty is a byproduct of your ilm in imamah. And therefore it is important for us to strengthen our ilm of imamat, to be able to establish the concept of imamat from the Quran. It has become very important, especially at a time like this where we live in a tufan, in a wave and a storm of shubuhat from every direction. You and I need to be well equipped within our deen. What is the proof of imamat from the Quran? Am I able to remove or deduce 10 ayahs of the Quran that speak about the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen? Am I able to give proof from the Holy Quran that the Imam has to be ma'soom? How many ayahs of the Quran speak about imamat? More than that, how many ayahs of the Quran in particularly speak about Amir al-Mu'mineen? We had spoken about this in the Ashura this year and the Ashura past. There are 2 verses in the Quran where Amirul Mu'mineen Ruhi Lahul Fida is mentioned by name in the Quran. Do we know which verses of the Quran these are? Which Imams have narrated this tafsir? Are they Sunnis who accept the same commentary or not? Amirul Mu'mineen is mentioned by name in the Quran. فَأَحْنَا, as lovers of Ali Muhammad, it becomes important. Leave convincing other people, leave convincing our children. Ahna, ourselves, should be able to reach a level of knowledge where we are able to deduce, prove, and establish imamat from the Holy Quran. First and foremost, to convince ourselves. If not, ahibai, with the dhuhur of the imam, every nation has been subject to an imtihan. Every nation, every generation that called themselves Shias or lovers of Ali Muhammad was subject to an imtihan. There are those who passed the imtihan and there are those who failed the imtihan. Starting from the companions of Rasulullah, companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen, companions of Imam al-Mujtaba, Sayyid al-Shuhada, all the way till Imam Hassan al-Askari. There were those who claimed to be companions. When the imtihan came, they abandoned the Imam. Same thing with the dhuhur of the Imam. Imam Sahib al-Amri wa Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Hadith al-Sharif tell us, every step of the dhuhur, there is going to be an imtihan. People will keep abandoning the Imam. Khutwa, khutwa, step by step, people will keep abandoning the Imam. For you and I don't have immunity, and nor do we have 100% unconditional pass that we are going to be with the Imam. La. Take the example of Zubair. Take the example of Talha. These were people who were with Amir al-Mu'mineen. Bidayat al-Amr, in the days of Saqifa, they were with Amir al-Mu'mineen. Shuf, natija, end of life, where? They fought against Amir al-Mu'mineen in Jamal. Ended up into Jahannam wa bi'as al-masir. فإحنا same thing. The starting point for safeguarding our iman and making sure we are not from amongst those who are going to flake and wal-ayadu billah, abandon or wage war against the Imam Zaman of our time. It is important that we are able to understand the institution of imamat from the Quran. Based on this, Ahibai, I would like to discuss with you, for the purpose of tonight's majlis, one ayah from the Holy Quran in regards to imamat. Understanding and establishing key aspects of imamat from this verse of the Quran. The point of reference is Surah As-Sajdah, verse number 24. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا لَمَّا صَبَرُوا وَكَانُوا بِآيَاتِنَا يُوقِنُونَ. And it is He, the translation of this verse, and it is He who has made from amongst them imams. Imams, plural, the plural of imam is a'imma. So it is He who has made from amongst them imams. Yahduna bi amrina, who guide, provide hidayah based on our commands. Tonight's majlis, we will focus on this first half of this ayah. Lamma sabaru wa kanu bi ayatina yuqinun is a totally different aspect of imamah altogether. The fundamental for today's majlis is to focus on this first part. If we understand this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every word of the Quran, kalima kalima, every word of the Quran revealed wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires contemplation and requires understanding. The purpose of the majlis is a tafsir of this ayah to help us to understand the azamah of imamat. All of this with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ya Ali. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajah. Tayyib. Kalima kalima, we begin word by word. Surah As-Sajdah, verse number 24. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَجَعَلْنَا. See, from this, you can not only see how to prove imamat from the Quran, but through the majlis, you also get methodology of tafsir, the science on how to understand the tafsir of the Quran. And you'll see this methodology, inshallah, fairly clearly within the course of this majlis. Number one, وَجَعَلْنَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and it is we who have appointed or made from them the imams. وَجَعَلْنَا. The pronoun noon alif at the end of the verb ja'ala. Ja'ala means to appoint. وَجَعَلْنَا. The people who appoint, the one who appoints, this pronoun goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From here we understand from the word وَجَعَلْنَا, it is we who appointed them or made from amongst them imams. From this one verb in the Holy Quran, I am able to understand that the responsibility of selecting an imam and appointing the imam is exclusive to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَجَعَلْنَا أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا. It is Allah who appoints the imams. So from here, if I believe in the Quran and I understand the Quran, it becomes very clear that an imam cannot be elected, whether it is Saqifa or it is somewhere else. People, if the entire mankind was to come together and appoint Fulan bin Fulan as the imam, that the imamat has no legitimacy, because the exclusive function, the exclusivity of appointing the imam is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So similarly, I see that Saqifa cannot be, the concept of Saqifa in itself upon the martyrdom of Rasulullah goes against this single word in the Holy Quran. People cannot gather together and elect, no matter how democratic that process is. Does not qualify. For if the elections of the people in their entirety does not legitimize the appointment of an imam, then what about the second and the third who made shura councils and one appointed the other? The first lesson that I must take if I understand the Quran, using the Quran itself, that the appointment of an imam is exclusive to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number one, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً. From amongst them, we have appointed them imams. Tayyib. Imam is selected by Allah. Election has absolutely no say, no. What is the parameters and the function of the imam? وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا. The word over here that we are focused on is yahduna. The job of the imam is to provide hidayah. Yahduna is plural tense, which is derived from the word hidayah, yani guidance. So the job of the ma'asum imam is to provide hidayah, to provide guidance. Hidayah means what? Guidance to remove a person from the darkness of ignorance into the light of ilm. Like the way we read, يُخْرِجُهُم مِّنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. So if I understand that the primary function of an imam is to provide hidayah, to provide guidance, to guide people towards the right path in regards to the affairs of their deen and their dunya, then I also understand that number one, hidayah is not contingent upon leadership in a government. Some people are of the opinion, in order for an imam to be, an imam's rule to be legitimate, he must also be at the head of government. And you find this within the school of thought of the Sunnah as well, that the Khalifa must be, or the Khalif, one of the jobs of the Khalif is that he is at the head of the government. His Khilafah is attached and associated to his political leadership as head of the government. And you find that this school of thought also trickled down into the Shia school of thought. Because you know, even within the Shia, You have a number of sects within the Shia. Not every Shia is Ithna Ashari. You have the Shia Ithna Ashari, and then you have the Shia Zaidis, and then you have the Ismailiya, and subhanallah from the branches, which is why when you go back to Ilm al-Rijal, you will find that a number of the scholars, for example, narrators of hadith, whom we even accept from, were Waqifis. Waqifis were those people who stopped at the Imamat of Imam al-Rida. They were there until Imam al-Qadim, but they rejected Imam al-Rida and Imam al-Jawad onwards. So you have a number of sects, but you find that, for example, the Zaidi school of thought are of the opinion that an imam must rise up even by violence, and it is a necessary duty upon him to gain control of the head of the government or the head of leadership, which is why you will find a number of people who subscribed to this Zaidi movement, which, by the way, between brackets, Zaid, the son of Imam Zainul Abidin, Aslan had nothing to do with this political motive. They used the political motive and the name of Zaid to hijack the entire revolution later down the line. That kalam is different. But the Zaidi movement is of this understanding that the Imam should take his right by the sword, which is why they rejected the Imamat of Imam al-Baqir. They said because Imam al-Baqir didn't carry arms, didn't stand up in revolution against the Taghi of the time, we reject his Imamat. But if you come to the Holy Quran, you find over here that the role of the Imam is to provide hidayah, guidance, mutlaq, unconditional, regardless of whether he has the position of head of government or he doesn't have the head of government. Which is why for us, we are able to understand and we believe that Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, when he engaged in this sulh with Muawiyah. By the way, you know sulh, when you look at the sulh that happened between Muawiyah and Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, this was not a peace treaty. It was not a peace treaty. This was actually a ceasefire. And when you look at ulama, the like of Sheikh Mufid, for example, and you look at contemporary Maraja who have written commentaries on the sulh of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, they describe the sulh as a hudna. Hudna meaning ceasefire. Peace treaty is very different in its meaning from ceasefire. In the future, if we get a chance to have a majlis on the shahada of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, inshallah, we will address that in further detail. But we understand over here that Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, before the sulh or after the sulh, whether the reins of the apparent government were in the hands of Muawiyah or not, Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba was still the divinely appointed Imam by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Political leadership is not a condition for the legitimacy of your imamat. The entire role of imamat is based on providing hidayah. Similarly, we are of the opinion, and we are able to deduce, rather, not opinion, we are able to deduce that even the awaited Imam al-Hujjah, even though he is in ghaibah, the fact that he's in ghaibah does not mean that the Imam is free from the responsibilities of Imamah, or that the Imam is idle and wal-ayadu billah is not executing the functions of Imamah. The Imam al-Hujjah, believe, is more active in the guidance of this ummah in the ghaibah more than perhaps what will be in the dhuhur. Just because we cannot see the Imam doesn't mean that the Imam is not functioning. You look at the letters, the two letters that the Imam has written to Sheikh Mufid. If you get a chance during these days, انتم راجعوا شوفوا, what does Imam al-Hujjah say to Sheikh Mufid? You will be able to see what the role of the Imam is in the ghaibah of this day and age, within the ghaibah al-kubra. So we understand, number one, from the word yahduna, that the role of the Imam is to provide hidayah. And this hidayah is independent of the fact of whether the Imam is head of government or not head of government. This is number one. Number two, you will find that the word that is used in the Quran for hidayah, yahduna, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا, who provide guidance, hidayah. The verb yahduna is a present continuous tense. The verb is present continuous in Arabic grammar. Within the world of tafsir, when you have a present continuous tense, that means this action is happening not only in the present time, but is also repetitive into the future. So when you read the Holy Quran and it tells you وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا, based on the grammar of this verse, yahduna, present continuous tense, which means that the Quran is a book of guidance even today. So even today, in 2023, on a day like this, when you open the Quran and you read this verse, Allah is telling you that we have imams, we have appointed imams who are continuously providing guidance. Present continuous tense, meaning that even today within our vicinity, within our communities, in the world that we live, there exists an imam who provides guidance. So from the grammatical construction of this verb, you are actually able to deduce and prove the existence of Maulana Sahibul Amri wa Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil faraja. Because this grammatical tense shows you that in every day and age there is an imam. Which means in this day and age there has to be an imam as well. And over here we are able to separate ourselves from the Sunnis or from the Amma, who also believe in the Mahdi, but they say the Mahdi is not yet born. We say, la, the Mahdi has to be born. And one of the proofs is that Allah is telling us that there is a divinely appointed Imam in this day and age, according to the grammar of the Quran. And this grammar is available in all the Qurans. It's not that it is restricted to us. So who is this Imam who is appointed by Allah? Any Muslim sect in the world have a jawab to this ayah of the Quran? No one except the Shia Ithna Ashari. This is one of the many verses that can be used in the Quran to prove and establish the imamat of Imam al-Mahdi. For look at the methodology of tafsir. Methodology of tafsir is that it is important, shabab, word by word, when you read the Quran and you do tafsir of the Quran, understand every word of the Holy Quran. Shows us the importance of studying Arabic language. Number two. Number three, look at the manhaj of the tafsir. We are analyzing and we are doing a tafsir of the general concept of imamat. But if you are able to establish the general concept of imamat, straight away you are also able to prove a particular aspect of imamat, and that's the imamat of Imam al-Hujjah. Look at, this is what is meant when our imams say that the Quran is an ocean of treasure, an ocean of ma'rifah. I have hadith from Ahlul Bayt that says every verse of the Quran there is a dhahir and a batin, and from the batin there is a batin until there are 70 batins. These are not empty slogans. When you do tafsir of the Quran in this manner, enter with your own eyes, you see the miracle of the Quran open and unfold in front of you. This is where iman is built. For you find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, yahduna bi amrina. So from the present continuous tense, the grammar of this one single verb in the Quran, I'm able to deduce the necessity of the existence of Imam al-Hujjah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Number three, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The verse goes on to say, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا. And we appointed from amongst them imams. We know the appointment of the imams comes from Allah. We also know that the job of the imam is to provide hidayah. You know that this hidayah is not contingent upon political leadership. From the word hidayah, the fact that it is present tense, you are also able to prove the imamat of Imam al-Hujjah. Jayyid. The next word over here is bi'amrina. وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا. That we have appointed, and it is we, yani Allah, who has appointed from amongst them imams who provide guidance. Tayyib, this guidance of the imam comes from where? يَحْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا. The word amr, yani from the command of who? The pronoun at the word of amrina, noon alif, refers back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I understand over here that when the Imam, as the divinely selected representative of Allah, when he provides guidance to the people, he is providing guidance as per the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Notice how the one who is selected by Allah also provides guidance from the command of Allah. He is receiving instructions from the one who has appointed him. If I understand that the Imam's hidayah, yani hidayah comes through what? Hadith, the actions of the Imam. How does the Imam guide us? Through his words, through his actions, through his silence. In the principles of jurisprudence, we study that even the silence of the Imam is a hujjah. There is a hukum shar'i that you are able to deduce from the silence of the Imam. So for example, if a person was sitting with Imam as-Sadiq, for example, Ruhi lahul fida, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, and drank black tea in front of the Imam. I'm just giving you a hypothetical example. This is not there in the history, but to make the example closer to home. A person is sitting next to the Imam and he drinks a cup of black tea. If the Imam remained silent, then we are able to understand from the silence of the Imam that drinking black tea is permissible. It is not mustahab, it is not makruh, it is not haram, and definitely it is not wajib. The silence of the Imam allows us to understand that consuming this liquid or performing this act is something that is mubah. It is a manner through which a hukum shari is extracted. So when the Imams provide hidayah through their words, through their actions, and through their silence, every word and every action that emanates from the ma'soom Imam or that emanates from the Imam is due to the command of Allah. The Imam does not act upon his own individual whims. So if I know that the Imam's guidance is a command from Allah, Allah is commanding the Imams, Allah is the one providing the commands to guide through the Imams, from here I am able to understand that the Imams are infallible, ma'soom. The fact that they provide guidance on the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are free of any error. Now I begin to understand when I enter into ayatul tathir, that my understanding of infallibility and isma becomes even much stronger, especially when you connect the tafsir of these two ayahs together. This is one. Number two, based on this, if you understand that every action of the Imam is a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a number of things that are shubuhat, doubts in our aqidah get solved. The entire world told Imam al-Hussein, don't go to Kufa. People are going to abandon you. People are going to betray you. They said to him, Ya Aba Abdullah, they betrayed your father, Amirul Mu'mineen. They betrayed your brother, Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. And this is what some of the ulama from the Amma say. They say that Imam al-Hussein was a mujtahid and he made a mistake. Wal-ayadu billah. They say he made a mistake. The entire Sahaba, all the Sahabas, all the companions, all the Tabi'een, they went and they guided, they provided advice to Imam al-Hussein. Baba, don't go to Kufa, don't go to Kufa. Imam al-Hussein didn't listen, he became Shaykh. See, this is the problem. When they think that the Sahabi or the Tabi'i can be an equal of the Imam. This is the tragedy. But if I understand that the Imam is commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the opinion of the entire creation does not matter, because I'm on the path of haqq. I am representing haqq, not that I'm on haqq. I am representing haqq, which is why Imam al-Hussein, when Muhammad ibn Hanafiya or Ibn Abbas asked Imam al-Hussein, Ya Aba Abdullah, why are you going to Karbala? Even Muhammad ibn Abbas said to him, don't go to Kufa. They betrayed your father and your brother. What did Imam al-Hussein say? Sha'allahu an yarani qatila. It is the will, the mashi'at of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I be shaheed. Meaning what? Every guidance, every act of Imam al-Hussein is a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Imam al-Hussein is showing you this verse. وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا khutwa khutwa, every step from Medina to Mecca, Mecca to Karbala, Imam al-Hussein was guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He acted upon the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I should say. Similarly, many times there are doubts and shubuhat. If Amir al-Mu'mineen was so courageous, Amir al-Mu'mineen lifted the door of Khaybar, La fata illa Ali, la sayfa illa dhul fiqar. How is it that the people of Saqifa could enter into the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen? How could they attack Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra while Imam Ali was in the house? So we don't believe in the attack and the burning of the door because this goes against the courage of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Baba, if I understand this verse, Yahduna bi amrina, I understand that Amir al-Mu'mineen was acting as per the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the command of Allah at that time was for Amir al-Mu'mineen to have sabr. You know why? Because the madhlumiyat of Sayyidah Zahra became the fasil and the furqan between haq and batil. Allahu Akbar. This is in addition to the number, there's a number of answers why Amir al-Mu'mineen stayed silent. In fact, we have a command of Rasulullah to Amir al-Mu'mineen to have sabr, no matter how difficult it is. And this is what makes Amir al-Mu'mineen, because no other human being would be able to have sabr in an imtihan this intense. This is what made Amir al-Mu'mineen. Rasulullah, this is mentioned in Kitab Sulaym bin Qais al-Hilali. And I advise myself and I advise each and every one of you, Shabab, Kitab Sulaym bin Qais al-Hilali is a book that each and every one of you must be familiar with. Imam as-Sadiq Ruhi Lahul Fida says, within Kitab Sulaym is the treasures of Ali Muhammad, the secrets of Ali Muhammad. And the one who is not familiar with Kitab Sulaym doesn't know anything from the secrets of Ali Muhammad. It's translated in English, it's available in PDF. Within Kitab Sulaym, Rasulullah on his deathbed says to Amir al-Mu'mineen, this is a command that Amir al-Mu'mineen is receiving from Rasulullah. And we know that Rasulullah receives the command from Allah Azza wa Jal, وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. But this verse comes back to this verse, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا. Their hidayah, their affairs are connected to the command of Allah. Rasulullah clearly commanded Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ya Ali, your position to me is like the position of Harun to Musa. And then he went on to say to him, Ya Ali, after me you are going to be oppressed and your rights are going to be usurped. Ya Ali, if you have and if you find 40 supporters, then take your right. 40 supporters. Rasulullah said to Amir al-Mu'mineen, 40 supporters you have, enter, Bismillah, jihad and take your right. And if not, Ya Ali, then have sabr. انتم شوفوا. After Saqifa, Amir al-Mu'mineen went to the houses of the Ansar and the Muhajirin one by one reminding them of Eid al-Ghadir. He said, will you help me take my right? Were you there in Ghadir? Did you not give me bay'ah? All of them said yes. Amir al-Mu'mineen said to them, if that is the case, I want you to meet me at Fulan place and shave your heads as a sign of loyalty towards me, that you will stand up with me no matter what, to support and to bring back haqq into place. Rajo Kitab Sulaim. 5 people showed up to support Amir al-Mu'mineen after Saqifa. 5 people. Don't be cheated in your Aqidah. Do not be deceived in your Aqidah. That for Fulan reason and Fulan reason the Amir al-Mu'mineen kept quiet or Amir al-Mu'mineen stayed silent. The reality of the matter is the Ummah of the time let him down. Just like the way the Ummah turned upon Harun. Harun had to have sabr. Same thing with Amir al-Mu'mineen. Yahduna bi amrina. And it is important. Everything in history. Read history, understand history with the lens of Aqidah. If your Aqidah is strong, your understanding of history will also be strong. You have that conviction. Every act performed by the Imam is a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. There is much to say in regards to this verse. I think for tonight, kafi. We understand if we put this entire summary together. Surah Sajda, verse number 24. Imam is appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The proof of this is the Arabic verb waja'alna. Number 2, the role of the Imam is to provide hidayah. Yahduna. The fact that the word Yahduna is present tense, you are able to deduce the imamat of Imam al-Hujjah. Ask anyone in the world, is there any other Imam who fits this ayah apart than Imam al-Hujjah? Hidayah is not contingent upon government. Bi amrina. The Imam's every word and every action is a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Masa'ib, ahibai. Tonight I want to take you in this journey of Masa'ib. I want to take you from Kadhmain, Baghdad, Imam al-Kadhim to Karbala. Imam al-Kadhim, Babul Hawaij, Imam al-Kadhim. Imam Mazloom. You find the manner in which Imam al-Kadhim was tortured and the manner in which Imam al-Kadhim was persecuted. For over 20 years, Imam al-Kadhim was moved from prison to prison. Do you know, Imam al-Kadhim, it is narrated in history, in one of the prisons that he was put inside. The prison was a cave that was under the ground. 10 to 12 feet, he was put in a hole that was dug 10 to 15 feet underneath the ground. The space was so small, the space was so narrow. Imam al-Kadhim himself says, I could neither stand upright nor could I sit down. I had to be as if I'm in a position of slanted ruku'. For years or for months upon months, for days upon days, Imam al-Kadhim was subject to this. Imam al-Kadhim says, the dungeon and this hole in the ground that I was imprisoned in, it was so narrow, it was so dark. Imam al-Kadhim says, there were times that I was struggling, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe inside. Your Masoom Imam is saying, Imam al-Kadhim Mazloom, I was not able to breathe. So he says, Imam al-Kadhim, one of the days, I raised my head to the top of the ground so that I could breathe from the vent. He says, as soon as I lifted my head from there, one of the guards of Bani Abbas kicked Imam al-Kadhim on the chest. Allahu Akbar. Imam al-Kadhim says, what is more painful for the manner that he kicked me on my chest is that in order to hurt me, he began to insult my mother Fatima. Allah, Allah, Madloom Imam al-Kadhim. It is narrated that this Imam al-Kadhim, for 3 days when he was poisoned, his janazah was left on the bridge of Baghdad, under the scorching sun of Baghdad, without a ghusl and a kafan, the body of Imam al-Kadhim on the bridge. The people and the army of Bani Abbas would cry out, where are the Shi'as, where are the Rafidis? This is the body of Musa ibn Ja'far. Did you not tell us that your Imam has ilmul ghaib? Did you not tell us that your Imam is invincible? Come and look at the helpless and the dead body of your Imam. The Maktal mentions that the people of Baghdad would walk by the janazah of Imam al-Kadhim, and the people of Bani Abbas would be kicking the face of Imam al-Kadhim. Allah, Allah. Madlum wa imama. When you read the ziyarah of Imam al-Kadhim, it says salam on the one whose leg was crushed due to the weight of the chains that were tied to him. The narrations mention that Imam al-Kadhim, in one of the prisons, his legs were bound by metal chains, and these chains were then attached to weights. The chains were tied so hard around the leg of Imam al-Kadhim. In his ziyarah we read salam on the one whose bone got crushed because of the weight. Allah. For 3 days the body of Imam al-Kadhim. I say, Ya Imam Musa al-Kadhim, in the manner that the bones in your legs were broken, in the manner that your body was left without a ghusl and a kafan, come to Karbala. Come to Karbala. The body of the grandson of Rasulullah, the body of the son of Fatima on the plains of Karbala. The narrations mention, do you know the manner in which they crushed the body of Imam al-Hussein? They trampled the body of Imam al-Hussein. Yawm Ashura, the final part of the Maqtal. Yawm Ashura, the Maqtal says, when Imam al-Hussein was beheaded, his body is on the plains of Karbala. Umar ibn Sa'ad said, I need 10 horsemen to come and trample on the body of Imam. Trample his chest and break every bone in his body. So they came with 10 horsemen. Umar ibn Sa'ad inspected the horsemen. He said, no, I don't want these horses. They said, why? He said, bring me fresh horses. Horses that are not tired from participating in the battle, so that they can actually break the bones of Imam al-Hussein. 10 fresh horsemen were brought. Allah, Allah, the body of Imam al-Hussein in the middle. They trampled on the chest of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Do you know what they say? They say the manner in which they trampled on the body of Imam, they broke the chest of the Imam. The Maqtal says, one of the enemies says, by the time we finished with the body of Imam al-Hussein, you could not tell the difference between the grain of sand and the broken bones from the body of Abu Abdullah. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Matam Hussein.
के मंजर को और अपने खुले सर को
بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں اپنے بندے ہاتھوں کو بیمار کے زیور کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں اٹھتی ہوئی آندھی کو وحشت کو بیاباں کو چھپتے ہوئے سورج کو تاریکی کو میدان کو چلتے ہوئے خنجر کو اور آگ کے بستر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں اٹھتی ہوئی آندھی کو وحشت کو بیاباں کو چھپتے ہوئے سورج کو تاریکی کو میدان کو چلتے ہوئے خنجر کو نیزے پہ تیرے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں لہراتے ہوئے نیزا ہے شمر کا وہ بڑھنا آگے میرے پیچھے ہر بی بی کا وہ چھپنا چولوں میں گرے گھر کو چھنتی ہوئی چادر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں جس رات میں تنہا تھی اس رات کے ڈھلنے کو ٹوٹے ہوئے نیزے کو اس رات کے پہرے کو بچوں کے سسکنے کو اور خاک کے بستر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں جس رات میں تنہا تھی اس رات کے ڈھلنے کو ٹوٹے ہوئے نیزے کو اس رات کے پہرے کو بچوں کے سسکنے کو اور خاک کے بستر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں ایک چاند تھا بدلی میں چھپتا تھا نکلتا تھا پردہ در خیمہ کا اٹھتا کبھی گرتا تھا وہ خیمہ لیلا سے ہے رخصت اکبر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں اپنے بندے ہاتھوں کو بیمار کے زیور کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں اٹھتی ہوئی آدھی کو وحشت کو بیاباں کو چھپتے ہوئے سورج کو تاریکی کو میدان کو چلتے ہوئے خنجر کو نیزے پہ تیرے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں میں بازار کے منظر کو اور اپنے کھلے سر کو بھولی نہیں یا حسین 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 ماشاء اللہ سجاد لئیے مشکل اے شام دا سفر 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 سجاد لئیے مشکل اکبر برادہ قاتل اکبر برادہ قاتل عابد ہم سفر سجاد لئیے مشکل اے شام دا سفر سجاد لئیے مشکل ماشاء اللہ اے شام دا سفر سجاد لئیے مشکل اکبر برادہ قاتل اکبر برادہ قاتل عابد ہم سفر سجاد لئیے مشکل اے شام دا سفر سجاد لئیے مشکل اے شام دا سفر سجاد لئیے مشکل ہو یار حاجتوں دا چپ چپ سجاد رہندا پوچھے حال کوئی روکے نہ شام دائے لیندا جڑے ظلم بے کے عابد جڑے ظلم بے کے عابد دنیا نو کی خبر سجاد لئیے مشکل اے شام دا سفر سجاد لئیے مشکل جیو ماتمی اے شام دا سفر سجاد لئیے مشکل اے شام دا سفر سجاد لئیے مشکل روندہ اے خون قیدی نئی مرض کوئی پرانی اے شام کا گئی ہے سجاد دی جوانی ہو یا ضعیف یکدم ہو یا ضعیف یکدم بازار دا سر سجاد لئیے مشکل اے شام دا سفر جیو ماتمی اے شام دا سفر سجاد لئیے مشکل اے شام دا سفر سجاد لئیے مشکل اے شام دا سفر سجاد لئیے مشکل اصغر دا کرتا ویر میری لد بچ رکھا دے احسان کر قبر دا بد نشاں مٹا دے تیرے بعد آ نہ جاوے تیرے بعد آ نہ جاوے میری قبر تیش مر سجاد لئیے مشکل اے شام دا سفر سجاد لئیے مشکل اے شام دا سفر سجاد لئیے مشکل اے شام دا سفر سجاد لئیے مشکل جنوں بشر ملائکے کر دے بڑی عبادت لیکن ہے لا الہ دی بنیادی ہے شہادت سجد حسین تیرا سجدہ حسین تیرا بے شک عظیم تر سجاد لئیے مشکل اے شام دا سفر سجاد
آخری انترا
مشکل اے شام دا سفر سجاد لئیے مشکل روندہ خون قیدی نئی مرض کوئی پرانی اے شام کا گئی ہے سجاد دی جوانی ہو یا ضعیف یکدم ہو یا ضعیف یکدم بازار دا سر سجاد لئیے مشکل اے شام دا سفر سجاد مشکل وہ عابد بیمار تھا وہ عابد بیمار تھا چلنے سے جو لاچار تھا چلنے سے جو لاچار تھا اور شام کا بازار تھا اور شام کا بازار تھا اور مصطفیٰ کی بیٹیاں مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین بر محمد والے محمد صلوات
السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوسين السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعل الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وأولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء السلام عليك يا مغيث الشية والزوار في يوم الجزاء السلام عليك يا أنيس النفوس السلام عليك يا أيها المدفون بأرض توس السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى الرضا السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان علمان 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 من فتنة الزمان السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان السلام عليك يا مظهر الإيمان السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن السلام عليك يا قاطع البرهان السلام عليك يا إمام زماننا هذا جل الله فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وزهورك السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته صلوات
Mu'mineen, Mu'minat, the Sheikh is available here till 17th of August. We request all the youths to please spread a word so that we can have Mu'mineen, Mu'minat and take advantage of it. Bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.